Making your way through work Monday takes everything you got. Then Monday night rolls around and you realize there's a shot. You're only 10 points away. All those times when your team had no fight, they're just so gosh darn frail. Then your star quarterback let another deep ball sail, and your third round pick bet on his team. Then go check out our streets where everybody knows your pain, and they listen to complaints. You wanna be where you can see our bodies bring you no shame. You wanna go where everybody knows your pain.
Welcome into another edition of the Dad Bod Fantasy Squad. It's Rob, and I'm here with the one and only Mr. Rob Norton. What's up, buddy?
What's going on, my man? How you doing?
I'm doing. I was just telling you off air, we got people shooting off fireworks around the neighborhood, so the dogs are loving it over here.
Yeah.
It's been a fun couple. It's been like a half hour. Like right when I was getting ready to hop on, they just started going off, so the dogs are not feeling too good right now.
Yeah, anyone I feel like over the age, like I know you were mentioning 18. I feel like anyone even like over the age of 25, or if you have 25. Kids or dogs, like once you get your own spot, and you start to really hate fireworks. I feel like,
oh, dude,
it's a nightmare, man.
This week and next week are the 2 weeks where I'm like, I just want to go on vacation and get away and take some time away from this area, just because it's nonstop. It just keeps going and going. And I live right down the street from the Cleveland Indians AAA team. Single A. So every Friday they shoot fireworks off. And it's like a huge, like grand thing to do. So it's just crazy over here. It sounds like an earthquake. It's nuts. So, and that's always it's like at 11:30 at night. The dogs won't stop barking until like 1. It's just nonstop.
Dude, it really is the worst. For anyone who doesn't like have pets or kids, like, you don't understand the aggravation of fireworks. Truly the stress it causes you in your household, man.
That's why we're starting late, because my dog was pacing around and I'm trying to get him to sit down and calm down. So it stresses me out. I'm over here walking around like an idiot. Yeah. But it's okay. Rough. We're back. We're good. It's me and Norton, so I could kind of calm down for the next hour or so while we bring you draft strategy. We're going to get into some draft strategy for this episode. We're going to cover Dynasty, Redraft, and Auction. This is going to be a very broad and kind of back and forth between me and Norton. We really don't have too many stats or anything like that to dive into. It's going to be more about how we approach drafts and how we personally view certain aspects of going about it. So this will be a fun combo. It'll be easy going, less sort of in depth about statistical stuff, but more of a broad aspect on how we view things. And I think that's very good for people listening.
Yeah, for sure. No, draft strategy is something that may not get talked about as much. A lot of people, will talk about, okay, this player, that kind of thing. But strategy of how you draft in different leagues, different settings, all that kind of thing is a huge, because it can change a lot.
100%. That's one thing. I guess we'll get into it when we get right to it. But I have a few things I want to cover before we even do get into hardcore draft strategy stuff that we're going to talk about, like more of a broad kind of overbearing topic that I don't think really gets talked about enough in the community, and kind of the less invested kind of fantasy football player has no idea about. So we'll get into that. But first, we're going to get into some of the NFL news for the day. There was one topic we don't have on here. Devontae Parker.
Yeah, as I say, just came over about an hour or two ago.
about an hour ago. Yeah, Devontae Parker, 3-year, 33 mil. If I saw that correct, I think 14 million guaranteed. Interesting. Interesting to say the least. What do you think that does for the Hopkins watch?
So I've seen I haven't dove into like the actual structure of it. I've seen, most people are like, what the hell's going on? But then I've seen a lot of people say that I've seen some people say that it's actually clearing cap space. So
Okay.
my first thought was that it kind of ruins the Hopkins stuff. But if it actually does clear cap space to give them more room, maybe it's something that can help them. So I don't know the particulars on that, so I guess I can't speak fully on that. I mean, but it does seem like it almost does seem like at least Tyquan Thornton stuff. I know he's been kind of like a super late round sleeper dart throw, especially in best ball drafts. But yeah, so he kind of loses some steam on the Thornton late round best ball hype, but I'd be interested to see what it does actually in terms of the structure of the contract, in terms of the cap space.
Yeah, that's a great point that I guess I didn't fully think about, what this does, like restructuring the contract and stuff like that. Maybe more bonus pay and less yearly, so it could be a positive point for the Hopkins. Does this make you move Devontae Parker at all in your rankings?
Probably not really much. I was already above consensus, I think, a little bit on him.
What's up, Albert?
And so I was already, a little bit higher than consensus on him, and kind of have been for years, unfortunately.
Yeah, you've always liked him, right?
Yeah. So
I was a Jacoby Myers guy.
What's that?
I was a Jacoby Myers guy.
Yeah.
Well, I was on that side.
I was gonna say I have always loved Jacoby. I have Jacoby on a lot of teams over the past couple of years.
I think he's so underrated.
Yeah,
player
for sure. But yeah, Parker's a guy. He's known as a contested catch guy. He's not a separator. I actually saw a wild stat. I think it was Warren Sharp put it out. He's been literally last place, the worst rated receiver in separation for 3 straight years, and it was literal last. So, yeah, it's interesting. He just clearly can't get separation. That's
very interesting to pay someone like that. But let's get into some other news. The Jets believe, I'm not even going to say that, Izzy can contribute right away. That's how I just say his name. He's straight Izzy for me, and he always will be. I love the Izzy's drinks, so that's why I'm going to go with that. But do you believe this, A? And B, if you do believe this, who's the odd man out in that backfield? Because there's too many people back there.
I was going to say there's a lot.
There's Zonovan, Brees, Michael Carter, and now Izzy. So if Izzy's going to contribute, like, someone's got to be the odd man out.
Yeah, I think early on, Izzy has a better chance early on, while Brees is still kind of coming back from ACL recovery. So I think he could have some impact right away. Maybe he'll give him a few touches, see how he does, and go from there. I think the one that hurts the most would be Zonovan, and then if he does start to eat into workload and look pretty good, I think Brees is gonna get his, especially as the season moves on. So, Zonovan will be the big one that could be hurt early on, and then if Izzy looks a lot better than Carter, then it could start hurting his touches.
Yeah, see, that's where I would be. For me, it would make me think that Carter is kind of the odd man out, but they got some decent draft capital on Carter now. Is he like a 4th round?
4th, I think he was 4th like 2 years ago or something, right?
Yeah. So, and Zonovan was what, a UDFA?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, it'd probably be Zonovan would be the odd man out. It just seems like Izzy's skill set's very similar to Brees in ways, more of like a pass catching, quick kind of guy, as opposed to Zonovan's more of that downhill, just like mash it in your face kind of style.
For sure.
So that's interesting. That'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Either way, I mean, Izzy coming in there, they have. I don't know if it says anything about Brees's injury that they did take Izzy, and what they're gonna do. I hope not, because we're all decently high on Brees. We think he's gonna have a really good season. So
For
as long
sure.
as he stays off of like that pup list at the beginning of the season, I'm curious to see how the rest of that backfield shakes out, because there is
Definitely.
value in that backfield even with Brees. There, the number 2 is going to be valuable.
Yeah, especially early on.
Yeah, for sure. DeAndre Hopkins still holding out for more interest. We kind of discussed this a little bit earlier, but so the news that came out was, the Patriots are still invested. They're still trying to attain him. Then there were 2 dark horses, I guess you could say, is the Cleveland Browns, which we've discussed a lot about, which makes a lot of sense to both of us.
Yeah.
And then the Carolina Panthers coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
That threw me for a loop to see the Panthers. I could see why they would want him, but why Hopkins would want to go to Carolina makes 0 sense to me.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's got to be, if he does go there, that's got to be pure money based.
It would have to be a massive contract.
That's what that's the only thing that makes sense to me. Obviously, it could be something where he just likes the area or something. I don't know, but it could be something that we don't really know of. But just thinking of the logical things of usual veterans are looking to get paid to still have a role and to chase a championship, and the championship part, he's not chasing that there in Carolina.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. Like in that one interview he did where he said he wants to play with an elite quarterback and have a chance to win. And it seems like everything that he's done is counterintuitive to that. Like,
I know. I wonder if that was a good PR move by him by saying that. That way, when he does take a contract, he does end up taking like a big paid contract that's not with those things.
Maybe he could just be like the whole time.
Yeah, he could just be like, well, I tried, but they were just lowballing me. I don't know. It's always a good thing to say for sure for him. But yeah, I would love it for Bryce. I'll tell you that.
I would hate it for Mingo.
For sure. That's
I would hate it for Mingo, man.
Yeah,
I'd be so pissed.
You're super high. I like Mingo too, but yeah, it would definitely knock Mingo. It'd
knock weird. It would be weird because they invested. They brought in DJ Shark. They brought in Adam Thielen. They drafted Mingo in the second.
Mm-hmm.
Then they go and get that rookie QB. It seems weird to me.
Yeah,
I think that's such a long shot. Like, I cannot see that happening, to be honest with you. But
I agree.
Crazier things have happened.
And it's wild too, because obviously Bills and Chiefs were like 2 of the lead teams for a while, and no noise out of them. So I really think it's going to come down to Patriots and Browns, honestly.
Yeah, obviously there's interest on both sides for the Patriots and D-Hop. So that seems to be real. I still think there's a possibility he ends up with the Bills or Chiefs. There's got to be a real possibility. It makes too much sense where they're not talking. Like they have to be talking at least a little bit. This could just all be these visits and talks and stuff like this could just be kind of a little scheme on D-Hop's part to try to get as much money out of one of those teams as he can.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, because and I think the other thing I was going to say, going to the point of like stuff where he likes the area. I'm pretty sure he went to Clemson. I was just thinking about it too.
I'm pretty positive. So
that part
maybe
makes sense.
He grew up over there.
Yeah,
still though, dude. I don't know. Cordell Patterson to return to more of a pass-catching role in 2023, which I think we all kind of saw the writing on the wall with that. So it makes a lot of sense. This is interesting. How do you view this, Nora? I'm curious your thoughts on this, because I think they brought in Bijan. Obviously, they used capital on Tyler Algier last year. He looked really good. Patterson was kind of he got hurt last season, but he was Algier really cemented himself as the better running back in that backfield. Now you bring in Bijan, a top 8 pick. there's going to be very little rush work for Cordell, but there's really no one besides Drake London in the receiving room that would scare me. So what are your thoughts on Patterson, and what are your expectations for this season?
Yeah, I still don't expect a huge role. So he's been on his pit stuff here. So
Yeah.
we don't take pit slander lightly, Mario. So
next time I'm not even putting it up.
Yeah, but no, yeah, I think CPAT probably. I mean, like you said, he's not going to take touches from Bijan. Tyler Algier isn't necessarily a big pass catching back, so he's going to be more utilized on the ground. CPAT has shown versatility over the course of his career. He's just an efficient player when he gets the ball in his hands. So I think they'd be smart to get the ball in his hands, more of a pass catching role, whether it's a gadget plays, whatever else. I mean, he's shown that he has some juice and he's got some burst. So obviously he's getting banged up, aging a little bit. Yeah, it's I think that's what's gonna be for CPAT this year.
Yeah. I'm not even gonna acknowledge it. Are you willing to take a dart throw on Patterson like late redraft, because he's gonna have the RB designation, right? Like he's gonna have an RB attached to him. So
yeah,
if you can get a receiver as, a possible number 2 receiver on a team that will still run the ball every once in a while as a really late RB, as your like, 4th RB, 5th RB. It's interesting to me just because of the designation of the running back, because it's either would you rather have him or like a Jerome Ford or something like that.
Right. He's going to definitely have more standalone value than a Jerome Ford. And plus, obviously, he still has the handcuffed upside value if Bijan, Algier go down, something like that. Like,
or if Drake London goes down.
Right.
Think about what that would do.
Yeah. So he has multiple versatile like paths. But yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. I honestly don't mind it. My philosophy is always stashing upside on the bench. So I can see paths upside 2 different ways with him. So yeah, I definitely don't mind stashing him on the bench late.
Because dude, he might be going like last round. He might not even be getting drafted right now. In like redrafts, and if you can snag him with your last pick and maybe he carves out a role as the number 2, number 3 receiver there. I think 2 is very optimistic. I can't see that. It's probably not going to be the number 2 receiving option there, but well, there's Pitts and stuff, but number 2 receiver, I suppose. But I think he's worth stashing if you can get him in the last round. I mean, when he's playing, he's really good. He's been very productive over the past couple of seasons.
I agree.
All right, Nort, what do we have on the agenda today?
I think we got ourselves some Name That Player.
The fans have asked, the fans request, and we are going to keep them coming. Back. Guess That Player is back.
It is.
And I love these, so
hopefully
I'm excited.
I'm interested to see if people will get them, especially because obviously I've been going by the themes of the shows, and now we don't got the theme for that.
That's a good question. Is this just encompassing everything? Quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends?
Yeah.
Oh God.
I said it will say what they are. One of the first clues is what position they are, but yeah, it could be anything. It's a mystery bag here.
I'm loving it. All right, Nort, let's start with player A.
We got player A is a wide receiver with early 3rd round draft capital and is 30 years old.
Okay.
2021, I'm sorry. 25.9 points per game, first in the NFL. For sure, too. 2022, last year, 22.4 points per game, first in the NFL. It's a wide receiver, 30-year-old wide receiver.
30-year-old wide receiver.
2 straight years of points per game, first in the NFL. Last year's target share was 31%, 3rd in the NFL. Last year's air yard share, 34.5%, 12th in the NFL. Yards per route run last year was 2.61, seventh in the NFL.
So this is a star.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now, player B, we have a wide receiver with late fifth round draft capital, 29 years old. So pretty close in age here. 2021, he had 17.4 points per game, sixth in the NFL. 22, last year, 20.4 points per game, third in the NFL. So we got another star here. Last year's target share, 31.6%, second in the NFL.
Oh, damn.
His air yard share last year was 39.8%, fourth in the NFL. And the yards per route run, 3.38, first in the NFL. So player A scored more points per game last year, but player B's target share, air yard share, and yards per route run, the underlying metrics are all better for player B. So first off, my first question to you, as usual, who would you rather have in this year and Dynasty? And they could be both the same, or you can
Dynasty.
Yeah,
Dynasty. I'm going B.
Dynasty B, redraft, which would
probably A.
Okay,
I'd probably still go A, even though it's very close.
Okay.
Very close. That yards per route run is pretty wild to me.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, we'll let some. Okay. We can let some guesses roll.
Okay, we got some guesses. Anybody want to guess? We have a couple from Albert over here. We got a Cooper Kupp. I'm assuming that's for A. Tyreek Hill, he says, for player B. Tiff, player A. ...
Whew.
I think I definitely, I'm pretty positive I know A.
Okay. Pretty confident on A, huh? I figured the A would be easier to get.
Yeah.
I think the points per game part was
a good guess. It's a good guess.
Adams is a good guess. All good guesses so far. Kupp,
that's a good guess for
Adams.
That's a good guess for B. He was a late round pick, right?
I think so.
I think he was in the fourth or fifth.
I'm not sure. I feel like I'm giving it away that it's not.
No, I think he was pretty late. All right, so I'm gonna do a combo here. I'm with Albert on A. Is B Diggs? Okay. Damn, Tiff, you're throwing me for a loop here.
That is another very
great guess. Those are great guesses. All right, so I'm gonna go player A. I think Cooper Kupp.
A is Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I knew that from the points per game. That's what gave it away for me. I knew he was number one in points per game receiver last season.
I figured that was going to be the point that gave it away for people.
Yeah.
So for B, we've got
Tiff's on with something here. I think B.
We've got to
go with her with
Tyreek, Adams, and Diggs.
I'm gonna go with Diggs. I know he was late.
B. That is a great guess. Diggs is probably one I would have thought of. B is actually Albert nailed it with Tyreek Hill.
He double dipped on us over here. Albert, congratulations. That was well done. Tiff, I thought you had some great guesses though with Adams and Diggs.
The Diggs guess is so good too, because considering the points per game, being an elite receiver, and I'm pretty sure Diggs is actually fifth round draft capital, probably really close to that age.
Do you know Adams when he got drafted?
I don't.
Thought he was.
That's why I was trying to not give it away that it wasn't Adams.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I lost. It's okay. Those were great guesses though. I lost too.
They were. That was the Diggs guess. I didn't even think about Diggs when I was putting the stats up as because sometimes I'll think of some people are gonna guess this person for this one, and
no.
But the Diggs one is honestly so close.
Speaking of drafts, the Blackhawks just won theirs. Interesting. That's interesting. I didn't know the hockey draft was going on. NHL draft.
Yeah, Diggs is almost 30. He's 29, over 29 and a half. He was a fifth round pick too.
He was a fifth rounder?
Yeah.
Adams is Adams 31 or 30? That should have given him. I know he's at least 30.
Yeah, I think he's 31.
Okay.
He might be still 30 actually though, but I think he was third rounder, but I'm not 100% sure on Adams. No, he was
Okay.
late second rounder, and he's 30
Was
and a
he?
half. Yeah.
Okay. I thought
But
he
he's
was
another
later than
great
that.
one for that too, because
That was a good
fifth and
guess.
second. Yeah. Fifth and
Diggs was a
second.
good one.
Yeah.
We got another one?
We got us another one. We're gonna
Hell
double
yeah,
dip in
let's
tonight,
go.
baby.
Let's go. I guess that player. We need a intro to it, you know?
I know.
If anyone wants to send in clips of you singing Guess That Player, we're welcoming it.
For sure.
I expect some clips coming through.
This is gonna be an interesting one.
Yeah, we'll get some good ones.
Yeah. All right. So, player A, wide receiver, 11th overall pick, 23 years old. In 2021, points per game, doesn't have one because he was in college, so it means he was a rookie last year. Last year, 13.2 points per game, 25th in the NFL. Last year's target share, 26.7%, 15th in the NFL as a rookie. Air yard share, 40.8%, third in the NFL. Yards per route run, 2.57, 10th in the NFL as a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
Now we got a 6th overall pick wide receiver, 24 years old. 2021, 15.4 points per game, 15th in the NFL. 15.2 points per game last year, 12th in the NFL. Last year's target share, 21.6%, 32nd in the NFL. Air yard share last year, 26.7%, 40th in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And a yards per route run, 2.81, 4th in the NFL. So, Dynasty, Redraft, which of these profiles would you rather have? So one was a rookie last year, one was a rookie the year before.
Off these numbers, I would go A for both.
Okay.
Now, underlying metrics, I think I know who A is.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Let's get some guesses going. I think I know. Damn.
You think you know?
Now I'm second guessing myself.
On which one? Both?
A. Player A.
Okay.
I'm
interested to hear. I'm interested to hear what you're first guessing in your.
All right. So Albert over here is guessing Chris Olave for player A.
It's a good guess. Great guess.
That's a very good guess. Yeah. It's player B, Justin Jefferson. No, his points per game have to be way higher. No, because his points. I don't think it's JJ.
No, but it's a good
solid guess though.
Yeah,
solid guess.
It is not JJ. I'll tell you that.
Because the 6th overall pick, JJ was later. He was like 18.
Yeah. Yep.
He was late first.
Yeah, because the Eagles passed on him. And
all right, player A. Okay. So I was gonna say Drake London.
Ooh, interesting.
But then I thought about it, and I think Drake London was inside the top 10.
Correct. Drake London is not the answer.
Yeah, that's a good guess, Tiff. I think she's onto something with Waddle. She says player B is Waddle. Okay, I think I got to go with Albert. He's on a hot streak. Is it Chris Olave?
Chris Olave is correct. Albert is nailing. He's killing this game.
For 3 today. I mean, putting me to shame.
Mario with
Garrett. Mario, you're wrong. Player B. I like Tiff's guess with Waddle.
Player B is Jalen Waddle. Waddle. Yeah. Nailed it.
Let's go.
Nailed it.
Let's go. So the 6th overall was the one I had to think for a while.
I know, right? I know. I'm sneaking out.
Yeah, he's sending DMs to Albert beforehand. They're trying to make me look stupid.
I know, right? No, but yeah, it's interesting. Both high-end guys, both top 10 dynasty wide receivers for sure, in my opinion. So,
yeah,
both sides.
No. I like, off the numbers, I would have to go with Olave. Looking at this like this, but yeah,
it's interesting Waddle. Because the thing with Waddle with the target share and air yard share is that the year before, I'm pretty sure his target share and air yard share was much higher.
Way higher.
Yeah, and it was obviously Tyreek Hill coming over that ate into that. And the thing with Waddle though, it's nice is he's another one that's like DJ Moore, like Steph Diggs, where they succeeded high A-dot roll and low A-dot roll. Like his Waddle's rookie year, he was much more of an underneath target. Get the ball in his hands, get the ball out quick, and let him do the work. And then in the second year, his air yard share went down, but at the same time, like in his target share went down, but he was more used, not necessarily in the same kind of role. Like he was used in a different kind of role. So different. Yeah, with Tyreek there. So
yeah, completely different. I love that photo too.
I know.
The Waddle photo. That's a sick photo.
Yeah, I love it. When I saw it, I was like, man, I got to use this one.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right. So now is the time where we get into some of the dynasty draft strategies. We're going to get into. We're going to start with that. Again, this is going to just be kind of a free-flowing convo between me and Norton. We're going to discuss some topics between all three draft styles and just give our personal opinions on how we go about doing it. So
yeah,
we're going to start with dynasty and go from there. So fast draft for slow draft for dynasty startups, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
Just in general. We'll start. So this will be dynasty startup strategies. So a fast draft or slow draft, if you're not familiar, there's two options for dynasty where fast draft is just your typical draft where you have a couple minutes in between picks. And then a slow draft, you can have up to a full day in between people's picks. What do you prefer? And is there a reason you prefer it, or do you really not care?
When it's a dynasty startup, especially if it's early enough, like right now, up until basically pretty much draft season, I want slow draft personally. Because personally, I love the draft process. People always complain about slow drafts; they take so long and this and that, and that's fine. I mean, I get it. I get impatient too because I want to pick. The shirt, it says Cleveland.
Rob. There's two Robs here, Tiff. You got to clarify.
I think it's you actually. Yours has more letters. Mine's got to be pretty easy to tell. It's Guardians.
So this is a DLF shirt that I got at the Expo last season. It says no off season, productive struggle, vacated targets, roster clogger, just a bunch of hot topic fantasy football stuff. The DFL guys, they're awesome. They're a fun time. I think I'm trying to think who gave it to me. I think it was Wyatt over there. He gave us one. So go follow him if you don't. They're a fun group to follow. He's a cool guy, Wyatt. We're always interacting with him. Mario's.
That's true. It's a conspiracy theory, you know.
Yeah, we're working on it.
We got together 30 plus years ago.
Sorry, Norton. Keep going.
But no, yeah, slow draft is my preference this early on. I just love like the fact that you can kind of work out more trades. You can kind of see things happening before you know. I love the fact that the trade aspect is the main reason for it. Just I really love like when you feel like, for me, like if I have a lot of players in a certain tier. I love to trade down, and then if I feel like I'm at a point where I see a spot where like, oh, there's a guy I really want to jump up and get, now I can use any of this capital I gained to jump back up. So slow draft is definitely my preference up until basically like mid-August, honestly.
Yeah, I agree with you. This was kind of my first season doing slow drafts for dynasty startups, and like you said, it just gives you extra flexibility. It's not as fun, I guess, because it's not a continuous go. So there's gaps where, you know, it takes 2 weeks to complete the draft or something like that. So it's not a consistent like bang, 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 bang. But like you said, when your pick comes up, you can see the board, you can take your time, kind of figure out your game plan. And if you want to jump up and make moves or trade back with your picks and stuff like that, it makes it way easier to to make things happen. And you can also, you have the opportunity to kind of talk to multiple people and try to get as much value as you can for your pick if you're willing to trade down. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, which I do like. And it's a lot of fun if you like trading. So if slow drafts and you like to trade picks and move around the draft board to get your guys, like it's a lot of fun that way.
Plus, the other thing I really love about it too is if you if you really enjoy the people in your league. I mean, that's not always the case. I would say that more times than not, people do. I mean, you join leagues with friends, but if you're in, leagues with people who talk a lot of trash or whatever else, and you enjoy that or whatever else, it keeps the engagement going for a longer period of time. Because once that slow draft finishes or once the draft finishes, usually it's a kind of dead period for most of the time. And we saw
especially
that with one of our
like 10 leagues,
right? And we saw that with like the recent startup that we were both in, where it was a lot of talk going on for a while, and it keeps things fun, keeps it spicy a little bit, and and then like it's kind of been dead for a little while since, for the most part, and so yeah, it's another fun aspect of the slow draft to me, is that it keeps everybody engaged longer.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. When to trade up, trade down. I don't know why I did it that way. Now I'm second guessing how I did these. Okay, go ahead.
Hey, it's all good. It'll be a little surprise.
I think it's going to jump to 3. When to trade up and trade down. What are you looking for? Are you just trying to go with your ADP and stuff like that, or what's your idea of that?
Yeah, so I'm very into tier-based drafting. I like to tier out my guys, especially and then I mean, once you get into a live draft, it really puts your tiers to the ultimate test. But then, yeah. So I'm
such an idiot. I know exactly what I did. But go on.
Hey, I
copied that one slide from the last one.
I was just thinking about that. I was thinking about it too.
Such an idiot.
But yeah, so I like to like I was saying before, where if I see that like I have there's a bunch of quarterbacks or something. We're in a super flex startup, and there's a bunch of quarterbacks in a tier for me. I like to trade down from that spot, knowing that I can pick up some value and get a quarterback I like similarly at this trade down spot. Same thing, running backs, things like that. So that's really when I want to trade down, when I have a lot of players in the same tier. And then if I see that tier start dwindling, that I really want one, and I'm like, oh man, I really got to get up before a drop off, in my opinion. That's when I'm like starting to really press heavily and hit up the managers in that spot. Like, hey, I'm trying to trade up here. What do you want?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head where, for me, I agree with that a lot. That's kind of later round for me when I'm going tier based and stuff like that. Early part, first, second, third round, if I'm really targeting certain guys, then I'll make my move. Like if I really want to get CeeDee Lamb, try to trade up, get him, throw what you got to throw at the other guy to get him.
Yeah.
And just work that way. So that's how I kind of view it. I like what you said there too. So how do you value your trade pick or your draft picks? I guess as a startup. So when you're looking at it, how are you viewing it? How are you viewing your next year's picks as well and the year after?
Yeah. So generally for picks, second round and after, I'm very open to dealing. First round, I got to get like some really good value for me to move the first round. I want to try to just stack first round picks if I can, even if that means trading off all my other picks. So but I for sure will use draft picks to trade up in dynasty startups. We talk about it all the time, like hit rates on players and things like that. So, and on picks. So I am more than willing to use any of my picks to trade up if needed.
Yeah. And that's a good way to go about it. I think the higher the pick, obviously the better the hit rate. That startups is so different because startups is really like a redraft, but you're basing off of like younger players. Like when I'm looking at draft picks for the current season, like a startup draft, there's a lot more weight to them, obviously, than future draft picks. But in those future draft picks, the hit rate's pretty wild. So I don't mind moving those at all. If I think my team is good, even a first round draft pick to me, it's kind of worthless. Like this season, I had a first round draft pick late in the first, and I got Jonathan Mingo. I really like Jonathan Mingo, but if I could have traded that first round pick plus something and got a decent starter, which I probably could have done before the NFL draft happened, I would have done that. So hit rate is about 75% in the first half of rookie drafts. Back half of the first round is 50%. And then into the second round, it's like 1 in 5 players actually hit and be productive for a fantasy football team. So after that first round, like it's not even, it's a crapshoot if you're going to hit on one of these players.
For sure. And then like speaking more specifically to like this year, for example, like Bijan to me, tier of his own. And then we've hit on it, but like, especially in Superflex, the next tier to me has like the 3 quarterbacks, and probably JSN and Gibbs, to me. And then like, it's a small tier break to like, Addison, QJ, Flowers, and then it's a small tier break after that for me. But that's, so for me right there, that's like the main cutoff after like Bijan, we already know it would need a ton to move. And obviously these are very specific year to year, but you don't know that heading into it, you know what I mean? But if you had a team like last year, for example, heading into this year, and you had a team that you knew your pick was going to be late first round, I'm right there with you. Like I'd be trying to move that pick, for any established, like pretty good, especially if they're young player.
Good. I mean, I would even go for like a DeAndre Hopkins if you could package your first plus somebody plus, I mean, maybe two players or 2 picks with that first round and go to get like Cooper Kupp coming off an injury, something like that, where okay, you plug and play that guy every week and he's going to be a stud for you, as opposed to taking a gamble on some of these players,
right? Because like you said, like you half the time it could turn out to be nothing. Yeah,
and you mentioned JSN, QJ, Zay, and Addison. Probably one of those guys is not going to be good. It's just, that's what the statistics show, right? So is it worth that gamble, or would you rather go get a proven player that can produce for you?
Yep, and I'm more on the proven aspect of it. Only played. So
okay, so you're talking PPR redraft. So this is all this first thing we're talking about is Dynasty strategy. So we've talked about Dynasty. I think you've been on seen a couple of our episodes with just Dynasty picks. So when you have a Dynasty team, you just carry your whole team over to the next season. And with that, you have usually 3 rounds or 4 rounds of draft picks for the following season. So right now my team is set, and then I have draft picks for next season with my team, so I can go and trade those draft picks for players right now if I want to.
Or if you're rebuilding, like you said, the opposite. You could trade away aging veteran players, that you don't expect to. If you're not a good team, for example, if you're not a good team and you're expecting not to compete this year, you could trade away a Dalvin Cook or all those kind of guys, aging running backs especially, to get picks for the next year to help your team in the future.
Yeah, it's a fun way to it makes fantasy football year round. Like you can make trades all the time. You have the same team and you're constantly making. If you love to trade during the fantasy football season, like this is the best way to get in a league that's active, is going to be active in trading. So that's for me, that's why I love it, because I love making trades. I love talking to people, talking shit, trying to get them to buckle on a price and wear somebody down like I did Mario last season. I got Justin Fields and I won the ship because of it. So it's a fun way to stay engaged all season and be in constant contact with your league mates all year round. Like it's a good way to keep it going. It's a lot
100%, 100%.
Yeah. How do you value youth in Dynasty? Like, do you have, obviously there's the players like an Adam Thielen or those older vets that in Dynasty, they're kind of worthless, right? There's a few players, and yeah, they're going to get you some points and stuff, but for your Dynasty team, they're really not valuable. But so how do you go about looking at that? Like, what's cutoffs? What are you looking for?
It's tough. This is one of the toughest
It's a tough
things
one.
because obviously you want to have youth. So to extend your window, the way I always see it is once a player establishes himself as pretty much a weekly startable player, like I value that so much. So then, like for example, like a Garrett Wilson, Garrett Wilson and Olave to me are already established like good with potential to be elite, and they're so young. So to me, it's like, well, they're already good. I'm fine with them being good, and they're going to start for me every week, and they have potential to be great. That is huge, very, very valuable to me. When youth is already proven to be at least good, that's when I value it like crazy. When now on the opposite end, if it's youth, like for example, we were talking about like unproven players, like we both like Mingo. Obviously, you're higher than him than I am, but we both like Mingo. But for me, for example, like it's unproven youth, so I'm not gonna. I don't value it quite as high right off the rip. Let's say, and obviously it's player to player, like we talk about, but for me, I would much rather have a proven player at that point than unproven player. And so yeah, and
Unless
it also
there's like a Bijan coming through.
Right. Well, that's the thing. It's like when it comes to running backs, especially young running backs who are already proved, like young running backs like Bijan, where they have elite draft capital, elite prospect profiles, and those kinds of things. They're almost like I don't want to jinx it and say surefire and a lock, but like it's rare. It's more often than not. You're playing the percentage here, and it's way more often than not that he's going to be good to great.
Yeah.
Right off rip. So like to me, that's the only kind of exception where you don't have to have that proven value. Like the draft capital, the whole entire prospect profile is already proven enough for me. So especially at running back.
Yeah. No, you hit everything for me. It's that proven young talent, second, third year players that are really starting to break out. Like they are so hard to get and so hard to give up. Like that's why I'm so high on CD Lamb, because he's still 23. He's got a few years in the league, and he's proven that he's an elite talent already. Like for me, he's so young. He's at the wide receiver position where we know that can go 28, 29 years old. Like he's going to be my number one receiver for the next 5 seasons, and I don't have to worry about him. Like it's plug and play. That's it. He's setting my lineup, and it would take a haul to get rid of him.
Yep, and it's really tough, dude, because it gets into this point too about the win now versus youth movement too. Goes right into it where it's the hard part is when it really starts to drop off to where you're like, okay, you got guys like I'm trying to think of like some like Treylon Burks, for example, where like a lot of the underlying metrics look good, but he didn't really like prove it right away. And so he's got the youth to his side. He's got some prospect profile pedigree to his side. He's got some underlying metrics. I like him. So like I do have him probably a little bit higher, but then at the same time, when you're talking about I've seen people have him higher. I'm high on Treylon Burks, but I've heard some people, I was listening to some podcasts recently that have him like top 12, top 15 dynasty. And I'm thinking to myself, who's moved out of it? Is it like, do they have him higher than Cooper Kupp, higher than Tyreek Hill, higher than like those guys who are like 29, 30, higher than Adams? Like it's so tough to me because those guys are like elite. And Treylon Burks, like I like him. And like I said, I named 3 aspects that I like about him, but he's not, those guys are elite still right now. Like, so that's the
thing for me when for me personally, this is how I've always done it for Dynasty. I view my team as pretty much 2 to 3 year windows.
100%.
That's how I go about. I look at my team in 2 to 3 years. Like even though I just said CD Lamb is going to be my receiver for the next 5-6 seasons, like there's outliers, right? There's outliers like that. For me, it's CD. It's like Justin Jefferson, Chase, like those players, you know that they're going to be elite for the next 5-6 seasons. You don't have to worry about them. But the rest of my team, I'm looking at 2 to 3 years. And for me, when you're talking about Treylon Burks and stuff like that, I don't know where he's going to be in next season or the year after. I know where Cooper Kupp's going to be. I know where some of these, 27-year-old, 28-year-old receivers that are getting a Stephon Diggs, a Devonta Adams, like I know where they're going to be around, where I'd much rather have them for the 2 seasons. And yeah, I might hold the bag at the end of it and I have to eat on it and I won't be able to trade them away. But for those 2 seasons, like I know what I'm getting. And with Treylon Burks, like he could be good, but he could just fall off a cliff and then you're going to get zero value for him. If he does nothing this season, he's worthless.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely worthless.
And that's the thing is like a lot of people get left. They think to themselves like, oh, well, yeah, Cooper Kupp, if you don't trade him, you're going to get nothing for him. And it's like, well, yeah, but I also got 2 to 3 years of elite production out of him. And if I'm contending, especially like he's pushing me to win titles and win money and things like that. Whereas Treylon Burks could end up outlasting him. I mean, I expect him to. I like Treylon Burks, but at the same time, like you said, there's a decent chance that Treylon Burks doesn't do well. And then if he doesn't do well, then what? Then his dynasty value drops off the map. If he doesn't do well in the next 2 years, he's dropped off the map and he's worth nothing. And then you didn't get anything in a trade and you didn't even get production. So it's like, I'm much more win now as well. I mean, as we've talked about before, obviously, I'm the type of person like, so, people think people are so confident in projecting what they think about players. They love being like looking back.
I got the diamond in the rough.
Yeah.
Like, I know.
They love that. Yeah.
My late round sleeper. Yeah. No, I get it because I'm the same way. Like Jonathan Mingo, dude.
And it feels good.
Musgrave, dude. Like I am pumping them up. I'm so amped up. I have them on all my teams and stuff. I'm like, these guys are gonna boom. But statistically, and looking at it from an objective lens, like more often than not, both those players probably aren't going to produce for me. I'll be lucky if I get a good season out of Mingo and Musgrave. The statistics are against them to even be relevant in fantasy football.
Yeah. And for me too, like, I think also when you look at win now and youth movement, things like that, when we're looking like how you said 2 to 3 year window, and I'm sure this is the same for you. That's a general, like for me, it's almost like running backs are 1 to 2 year window for me. Receivers 2 to 3, maybe 3 to 4, quarterbacks 3 to 4, in that kind of range.
Yeah. I'm definitely more, leash is shorter for running backs.
100%. Cause like we talked about before, they change so quickly. The value of them changes so quickly. An injury can totally derail a guy.
Even in the NFL as a whole, like it blows my mind Dalvin Cook isn't on a team yet.
Yeah.
Like he's been elite for the last 5 seasons, 6 seasons, whatever it's been. And this guy can't even get a job. Maybe he's just taking his time. I don't know, but you would think some teams are throwing bags at him to get him on the roster. And that's just not the case. Lenny, Ezekiel Elliott, like those are the ages. That's what we're talking about. We're like, okay, last year we should have traded Zeke away in Dynasty. Get rid of him because the end is near. So that's when you have to you got to time it just right. And you'd rather trade him away a season early than a season late. Right?
Like especially when it comes
one season early and then the next season he still has a really good year, but like the end is coming. And that's for running back specifically for me.
Yeah, and that's a great point too, because what people should be doing, especially 2 situations to me where you should be looking to deal those aging running backs. One, you're rebuilding. That's an obvious case. But another case where you can gain value and still do well is that if you are a contending team and say Zeke was like your RB3 or 4, something like that, like you don't need him. You could always look to another contender that needs a running back, trade him away for a pick and get value before it drops off instantly when you know like that contract's up. So those are the 2 situations where you really want to do it.
Yeah, 100%. That's a good thing. Good thing that you pointed that out too, is like know the contract situations with these players as well, because it really does matter in Dynasty.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's get into the meat and potatoes here, the redraft draft strategies. It's a mouthful. So let's start with number 6 here on the back end, tier-based drafting. How do you go about setting tiers, and are you is that your most used approach when drafting for redraft?
Yes, it generally is. When I'm doing, I really love tier based drafting just because I get an idea of being able to draft a similar level talent, and seeing where drop offs come at each position. So what I like to do is I go ahead and I'll put out my rankings. I'll go through my rankings, look at ADP, kind of see where for me like where each position drops off. And then once I figure out where each position drops off, I kind of then will, sometimes I'll look at the drafts, I'll look at the ADP and see where players are going. And from that point, kind of see like, okay, this tier, of, tight end, for example, look at tight end, Kelsey, tier of his own. To me, I have Andrews kind of in a tier of his own. And then I have like Pitts, Hawkinson, Goddard, Waller, all in a similar tier. So then when we get to that point, if I didn't take one of those first 2 tiers for me, I'm looking at any of those 4 guys and I'm looking where the latest ADP goes of those 4 guys. And then I'm also then comparing it to the other positions where the latest ADP of whatever my current tier that we're drafting in. And then from that point, that's kind of where I make my decision to see if I think I'll still have anyone left in those tiers when it comes back around to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, you hit it. For me, this is how I draft. Tier-based drafting in redrafts. That's based off of my tier projections. And so I'll build my tiers out based on my player projections with my all my stats and stuff like that, which it gives me a clear tier break in between players. And I do it based off of running back, receiver. I don't like doing it tier based for like a top 150 because it doesn't make as much sense in my head for me.
Like an overall.
Overall, yeah.
Yeah,
so,
same.
Like an overall tier base, it just doesn't really make a lot of. I mean, it doesn't work for how I view it.
Same.
So I'll just tier break all the positions, and I'll see where it'll give me a solid gap of like, okay, a 10-point gap between 2 receivers. That's my tier break. Like that's the next tier down, and that's how. And then I'll have my ADP up with me, right? So I'll have an ADP list of what's going on, the trend in drafts, and I'll kind of base it off of that. So if I have some, like for me this year, Miles Sanders, I'm super high on him. So I'm willing to probably wait on my RB2 till Miles Sanders around his ADP. I'll probably jump a round or so for him
to make
just
sure
I get him. But it gives me more flexibility because he'll be in my tier 3 or 4, right? And I'll just have that flexibility to wait on my RB2 and hopefully stockpile a couple higher tier receivers or a tight end.
Yeah. No, that definitely makes sense, especially, you look at it and you can kind of, the thing is once you tier out each position, you can kind of see where your general targets are going to be. If you just look at ADP based on where you're drafting, whether it's Underdog, whether it's whatever site you're drafting on, if you look and you're like, like I said, like if you for your example, if you have Miles Sanders in a certain tier and you see, the 4 other players in that tier are going in, around picks 40 through 50, and then Miles Sanders is going 70 and he's in the same tier, you're like, okay, well, he's the target. He's the guy that I'm probably going to be looking at more often than not because I have the valued the same as what these other guys are going. So it gives you a really good idea of kind of what players you're generally going to be targeting in drafts too when you see it like that.
Yeah, for sure. Albert, we're going to get to that. That's coming up.
With the hero. Yeah.
With the hero RB. But yeah, for me, I want to talk to Mario because we have our, we got our rankings live and stuff like that on shameless plug. If you guys want to go check out our rankings, we have them up on it's on our Twitter page. You can get it on there. It's a pinned tweet where it's just a link to a Google sheet of all our rankings. I'm going to talk to him. Hopefully, maybe we can get away where we can link some sort of ADP to it with current updated ADP on these players, where it would, if you can, like you said, man, if you have your tiers and your rankings and you see that the ADP with your ranking is drastic, like that's a player I'm targeting. Like I know I'm going to have a ton of Miles Sanders this season just because I'm super high on him as opposed to everyone else who's a little lower. And that just gives you a clear view of, okay, his ADP says he's going in this 8th round. Okay. But he's in my tier 2 or 3. I'm going to jump on him in round 7, make sure I get him locked up and have that already kind of planned out before the draft, where I'm like, okay, this is who I'm targeting in the 7th round. This is where I'm going to go. And it'll give you a clear path. Because if you have those players where the gap between ADP and stuff's already way off and you can kind of game plan, I'll jump up around ADP and get them. It'll show you like, okay, I'm getting my RB2 in the 8th round. I'm getting my receiver in the 5th. I'm getting, it'll kind of plan it out for you and you can see where you need to fill in.
Right.
That's how I like to do it going into these redrafts. I'll kind of build my team out based off of my rankings versus ADP and where I think I'm going to get these guys.
Exactly. No, I think it's a great way for sure. It's pretty similar, basically the way I do it.
Mm-hmm. I knew that was going to happen. Let's go to that first. Early QB versus waiting. Are you a QB early guy or QB late? Or are there reasons why you would over would not?
I'm more often wait. And I used to always pretty much be wait, but now you're getting they're starting to get to where elite early QBs are becoming difference makers, unlike in past, because people are getting wiser to the running quarterbacks. They're pushing them up further. Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen.
Not as easy for your guys anymore, man.
Yeah, I know. And I used
still got A-Rich this season, but
I know. And that's the thing, is I probably have a lot of them. So that's been the time tested thing for me, has been like, just draft the QB that runs, that's going with the latest ADP and profit. It's worked year after year pretty much all the time. So but now you see those early QBs are becoming bigger difference makers than they used to be. So yeah, I don't mind taking early QBs depending. I do it more. Well, I would say I do it more in best ball just because I have more best ball drafts, but I don't mind it more in best ball just the way when I'm filling out a different type of roster builds.
And this is drafting in a QB early.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't always do it. I mean, I do different kind of builds and things like that. But yeah, more often than not, I wait. I would say it's hard enough.
Tiff says it's hard to wait when there are 14 people in your PPR league. So I'm in early-ish middle for QB. That's a great point. So what I wanted to kind of touch on, which I didn't, and I should have pre getting into these, is the main thing people don't talk about is your league settings, right? Your league, your league rules, and how that can drastically affect really who you want to go after and what positions are more valuable. Is it a 4-point or a 6-point touchdown pass? Like that makes a big difference on if I'm going for a quarterback early or if I'm going for a quarterback late. Like if it's 6 as opposed to 4, I'm gonna try to get one of those guys. I'm going to try to get a Patty Mahomes. I'm going to try to get some of those guys that I know I can count on, 35 plus touchdowns, because that's a huge difference. Now, if it's 4, it's not as big a difference. So yeah, I could probably wait a little bit and try to get a Jared Goff or a Kirk Cousins. So that's a big thing for me personally. And like Tiff said too, like league size, the size of your league, it makes a big difference on those, the one, like the tight end and the quarterback, because there's just not as many going around. There's not as many good ones to go from. So you got to be prepared to kind of jump on a guy that's slipping a little bit. And you're going to have some weak spots on your team, but I'd rather be weak at my RB3 as opposed to my QB.
Yeah, it's tough. So it's funny because I always think, so like in a 10, for example, 10 team, 12 team, 14 team, just comparing those 10 team single QB league, I actually am more likely to take an early guy. just because there's more guys there's more guys at the other positions that you can feel comfortable starting. So like, especially if it's like, say, a 10 team, 2 running back, 2 receiver, and flex, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, most of us are probably used to playing in maybe a 3 receiver flex 12 team league, right?
Yeah.
So you're thinking 36 to 48 wide receivers deep. Now you get in a 10 team league that has 2 receivers and a flex, that's 30 deep max at receiver. That's where I'm like, well, damn, I'm taking elite tight end, elite quarterback, and then I'm going to feel good about still what I'm getting here at wide receiver. Whereas if you
That's an
do that,
interesting way to look at it.
yeah, if you do that though in a 14 team that if you're in a 14 team and you have 3 receivers and a flex and you're going like 50 deep at receiver, you're not going to feel as good as starting wide receiver 58 as you would in a 10 team league starting wide receiver 26. You know what I mean? So that's the way I kind of look at it too. It's always tough because it's kind of counterintuitive when you think about it, because they're like, well, if you wait on QB, your QB is going to be worse, so your tight end. But at the same time, in a smaller league, a shallower league, you want as many differences makers as possible at all times, because it is everyone's starting more started like lineups. The smaller the league gets, so yeah, and that's why we always talk about too, like trading in a smaller league. You gladly trade a 2-for-1 where you get the best player because the replacement level is so high. So yeah, it's like you said, and that's something that people don't talk about a lot, and it's super, super important.
Yeah, no, I think knowing your league rules is the most important thing when you're going into a draft. That
100%.
We can sit up here all day and tell you like who our rankings are and who we think is going to be, you know, the number 5 receiver, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if we don't know, you can have some really I've seen some really goofy like league rules where my wide receiver 8 might be my wide receiver like 16, and it throws it would throw everything off. So that's why it's important to know. And if like you guys want specific stuff, just DM us and shoot us over your league rules, and we can look at it and maybe give you a couple different ideas on if there's weird stuff in there that like, okay, I'd go this way as opposed to using my rankings, because my rankings are geared for a PPR, just normal setting, scoring system.
Same.
So that's where like things get really weird, and these like players going into it just using like, again, using our rankings or anyone's rankings, where they go into a draft and the league rules don't mimic what we're ranking, right? It's just completely different, and it's going to screw you up with your draft. So that's why that, for me, that's a super important thing to know. And again, if you guys have any questions, just DM us and we'll help you out with those. And
absolutely,
hopefully we could get you some different perspectives, because that's how a lot of the general public draft, they just go in with like a generic ranking, top 150, and they go off of that and see what they get. But if you know your league rules and who's more valuable and who's not, like a tight end premium versus a half tight end points scoring, stuff like that, like you can have a massive advantage over the rest of your league if you just simply know the rules.
Yeah, you'd be surprised at how many people don't know their rules and settings very well, and like that's one of the wildest things to me. Is like that's always something where I'm like, I know my rules like inside and out. I know like I try to find all the little edges I can when it comes to, you know, league settings, league rules, scoring settings, drafting, you know, and then obviously further down the road we can talk about this more later, but like pickups and, you know, roster construction, where you can have at certain spots, all these kind of things. Like
like IR slot for, you know, there's so many weird things that you could play off of that a lot of people just don't know. So that for me is a massive thing. But let's keep it moving. So next thing up would be early tight end versus waiting on the 10. And then I'll throw this out to you too. I'll let you kind of sit back and talk about it. I'll sit back while you talk. But I guess you kind of just hit on it. You would do it most in a 10-teamer. But are there any points where you would go early for both QB and tight end?
Yes. So early tight end versus waiting is pretty similar to me as QB. Obviously a little bit different. I will say I'm more likely to go early tight end than early QB.
Me too.
Like I'm more likely to take Kelsey than I am truly elite QBs. I'm more
Patty
likely to take
Mahomes.
Andrews possibly than some of them. I think it's a bigger gap between the elite and the not when it comes to tight ends. Yeah. So like I am more likely to go early tight end in more league settings, especially the smaller I get. Like I talked about with when we were talking about QBs with 10 teamers. So for sure.
For in 10 I have teams, one in my Dynasty league.
In 10 teams, I'm especially trying to do stuff like that. Like I'm trying to get as much upside as possible. I need as much weekly difference making players and positions as possible in a 10-team league because dude, all the time you see people all the time posting on Twitter, my team, this team, blah blah blah, and then people are always like, oh, what is it, 10-team league, blah blah blah, and then like because they know like 10-team leagues, pretty much everyone's stacked in 10-team leagues. So where are you getting that edge? Where are you finding that advantage? To me, it's taking as much elite players as possible. And
that's a good question. How much does your strategy change in a tight end premium league? There's different tight end premiums, right? So there's like a 1 point, there's a 2 point, there's extra points for like yards. Some will get 2 points for every 10 yards as opposed to 1 point. So if the tight end like premium is very skewed to the tight end, I'm gonna reach on a tight end. There's no way I'm not coming away with one of the top like 4. If I can, I'll do anything I can to get that, like second round or third, however I got to do it.
Especially when like
now if it's like
go ahead.
I was gonna say now if it's like a half point difference, like a 1.5, I've seen those where it's like 1.5 per reception, stuff like that. I'm not as aggressive as I normally would be in like a 2 point, but it's still important to go out and try to get one of the better guys for sure.
Right. And that's the thing is knowing the boost it gives you. For example, like you said, if you go from half point to full point, that's still 100% boost. And it's nicer than obviously.
Big difference.
Yeah, it's nicer than going from 1 point to 1.5. So, and the same thing like 1 to 2 or whatever. Like you got to know the boost, you got to know the percentage as well as the raw volume. Like, and you compare those kind of things and play it out and see. But it definitely changes it in terms of especially the elite guys that get a lot of volume, especially when we're talking because most tight end premium leagues are for catches. So if it's the elite guys that get a lot of volume, it separates them even more because they're getting more catches already to begin with. So every extra catch they get is more ahead of. It's creating a bigger gap. So. I definitely am very much more likely when it comes to tight end premium, like for catches to push early tight ends even earlier and take them.
For sure. Yep. Me too. In a general redraft, I will go for a upper echelon tight end if he slips. If it's not like Kelsey, if he comes to me in the first, like a late first round pick, I think he's worth that value.
Yeah.
The other guys, like if they slip down to me at a certain point where I feel like, okay, this is just very good value, I'll pull the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to try not to go for a super early tight end if I can. Because I think I can find some good value throughout it. Like unless you're getting one of the top 2 or 3, or like a Kelsey, Mark Andrews, I'd probably throw Hawk in there this season. Like if you're not coming away with one of those guys, it's still a crapshoot. Like I love Kyle Pitts. I love Kyle Pitts.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a real possibility that he could finish as tight end 8 this season. And you're using a 4th round pick on him. Like that, the value's not there for that. But if Kyle Pitts falls me in the 6th round, like I'm willing to take that gamble.
Yeah. My other question I was going to ask you too, based on this, you can go for QBs and tight ends. If you don't get one of the elite guys, are you going to take 2? When it comes to, and I mean, obviously it depends. The other thing is obviously depends on roster size, how many bench spots you have, because obviously the less bench spots you have, the less availability it would be to stash a tight end. But
especially tight end.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm the same way. Like for example, for me, it's a cutoff after like I think it's 7 tight end. If I take one of the top 7 tight ends, I'm not taking another one to stash on my bench.
Yeah, no. So usually what I'll do in these situations, like if I'm waiting on QB, if I'm waiting on tight end, my main goal to come away with, I try to get, if like it happens to me all the time where I'll wait on QB and tight end.
Yep.
And my goal in those drafts is to come away with one QB and one tight end that I'm very comfortable with, that I think there's a very safe floor, like a Jared Goff, like a Cole Kmet, like those types of players where I'm very confident that I'll be okay. And then I'm taking a swing on somebody, like an Anthony Richardson, like a Chig Okonkwo. Like I'm taking a swing on those guys that have the upside, Greg Dulcich, that has the upside to be a top 8 QB or tight end.
Yep.
But I have my safe floor with my one player.
Yep. And
that's how I would go about doing it.
And I was going to say that's the exact same thing I'll do generally. I think pairing it's funny because Kirk Cousins is always the guy in 12 teams leagues where he's
Kirk and Jared Goff.
Kirk and Jared Goff are like the same. Rodgers kind of sometimes slips to that point. It's like those guys where you're like at the safe pocket passing QBs where if your upside shot doesn't hit, then guess what? You got this safe guy that you're fine with. And then, like you said, Komet's a guy. Dalton Schultz is kind of a guy for me, where like he's should have decent volume, should be solid, but you don't see the upside in terms of like touchdown equity of that offense. So then you're taking the shot on Chig, the shot on Kincaid, Dulcich, like those kind of guys. And obviously it's very your boy, good old Musgrave, baby. But and it's also, again, it's very dependent on league. Obviously this is more 12-team based. But like obviously, when it comes to other things, like you got to make the judgment calls when it's deeper leagues, deeper rosters, deeper bench spots. Like those are all the things that can change these kind of strategies. But in general, I 100% agree.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think we're kind of lockstep with how we go about that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about 0 wide receiver. Are you ever doing this strategy? Do you like doing this strategy?
Not necessarily. I don't. I mean, I'm sure it can play out. It could work in different formats. I think you're putting yourself at a disadvantage, though.
Yeah, you would need to come away with. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
But if you're doing a 0 wide receiver, like for me, you better come away with Patty Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, or Josh Allen and Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews.
Yep, that's how I feel.
Like you have to come away with one of those QBs and one of those tight ends.
Yeah, for sure.
That's your first round pick, second round pick. So if you stack like a Patty Mahomes, Kelce on the 1-2, and then
come back with Tony
Pollard and another, say, I don't know who you're getting in the 4th. That would be Najee.
I think he's going 4th-ish. I was gonna say Ramondre, but he's in 3rd. But
yeah, but if someone slips you, say the only way I would do it is if there's like such value like that, like Tony or like Saquon somehow slips to 3rd, and then you can follow that up with like a Tony or something like that, where there's just crazy screaming value with 2 top 12 running backs, and you started off with like a Patty Kelce stack.
Yeah,
it's the only way I'm considering it.
And honestly, I'll tell you this. So the biggest way, one of the only ways I would really even do this too is like I talk about with a 10-team league. Because say it's a 10-team league where you only start 2 receivers in a flex, and it's also maybe half PPR or non-PPR, for example. And you're less worried about getting those receivers as is, and you're going to get 2 solid ones, almost guaranteed in the 10-teamer with that short of starting spots. That's a realistic draft outcome in a 10-teamer, is getting Kelce Mahomes stack, coming away with Tony Pollard in the 3rd and like in a 10-teamer, and then coming away with another high-end running back. Maybe, like I said, maybe you get Najee, maybe you get Jahmyr Gibbs, maybe you get something like that in the 4th, someone that slips, maybe Mondre slips, something like that. You could come away with that kind of situation, and you could still end up with pretty solid receivers in a 10-teamer like that. Yeah, like in the 5th round. And
yeah.
So it's very doable in that situation. Once you start to get into full PPR, 3 receivers in a flex, that's
luck.
Yeah, you're because you're going 48 deep pretty much just in
The
starting.
only way too, like it would also have to be like crazy premiums for QB and tight end.
Yeah.
Like if you have like a really high premium tight end and 6-point passing touchdown sort of thing. Even then though, it's still like, damn, it's tough. It's tough to not try to take a swing on one of those receivers
for sure.
So for me, out of all the ones we're going to talk today, this is the one I use. I don't know if I've ever used it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it definitely is the least used and least popular.
Yeah, and then 0RB.
0RB.
This is definitely more popular. Has become more of a popular draft strategy over the past like 5 seasons. I would say it kind of got some steam. People were talking about it. What are your thoughts on this, and how do you go about building a team with this?
I like it more than 0 wide receiver, but it's still not my favorite. It's playing off of the fact that we talked about earlier, where running backs change in value more drastically. Running back is more of an opportunity position, whereas wide receiver is more of a talent-based position. So if we're looking at running backs, just takes an injury. So basically, the idea behind 0RB is that, for people that don't know, it's you just basically start loading up on wide receivers. Essentially, you want elite production at wide receiver. You can take elite tight ends, elite QBs. Ideally, you'd get elite everywhere. Except for a running back. And then you just start, once it hits, later in drafts, you should start hammering out running backs. Ideally, what you want to do, in my opinion, with 0B is take the latest, basically like guys that have volume early in the season, essentially. So like, you're taking a guy like James Conner. Samaje P. Ryan, James Conner, those kind of guys who have volume, but no one really wants them. And you take those guys, so that way you have like volume to start early in the season, and then you just take a ton of guys on your bench for upside. And you're just basically Miller. Kendra Miller. You're taking a lot of the rookies, Tajay Spears, Tank Bigsby. Yeah. You're taking anyone with handcuff value, Jerome Ford, like any of these kind of guys that are one injury away from becoming a starting. The guys, Tony Pollard used to be that guy that, a couple years ago. And then Alexander Madison is like the typical guy that used to be that for Dalvin Cook. The guys that
David Montgomery this season, he's a
late one he's kind of in that James Conner mold where people aren't really, he's going to get volume, but people aren't really big on him. You want a combination of those kind of guys, because you still need the volume, because you don't want to get into a hole early on in the season. Mm-hmm. You still want touches, but you also want to take a lot of bench upside shots, because the thing is like at this point, my bench, if I do this, is loaded with running back handcuff upside running backs. Like, because that's the thing is like you already so set at receiver, you are hoping for running backs on your bench to gain value and become starters. Like you were hoping for those guys that break out. You're hoping for those guys that start to get a ton of work because of injury. And then, because then once that happens, when that hits, because the running backs get hurt so much, if you're the one that's holding the Alexander Madison card, now you have a top 10, top 15 running back on a weekly basis, and you got him way late in the draft, and the rest of your team's already loaded. So that's the idea behind it, and that's why it works, is because of the frequency of running back injuries. It's just the hard part is it's got to be timed correctly, and you got to pull it off correctly with a roster build and roster.
You got to get lucky,
exactly.
Right, like you have to get lucky at the end of the day.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I. This is one that I've tried. It's not my favorite to go about doing it, because, like you said, you got to get lucky. I'm more of 0RB, right? For most of what people say is you're waiting till like the 6th, 7th round to
minimum,
take a
pretty
swing.
Much, yeah.
Because you're trying to get your QB and tight end before, so you want to come away with like 3-4 receivers plus a tight end QB, and then go for RBs.
Yep.
Now, again, if you have your rankings set out and you're looking at ADP versus everything, you can kind of game plan something out. For me, I'm more of someone that will go heavy receiver early, like 2 or 3 to start, and then I'll try to find my value at the RB position, like Miles Sanders, J.K. Dobbins, who I'm high on this season, Dameon Pierce, those kind of players that should be there later on in the draft where I'm very comfortable with. If I come away with Sanders and Dame Pierce as my 1-2, I'm very happy. And I think that's doable later on in the draft, but I don't know if you can consider that a 0 RB approach.
I think it's close. It's close at least.
Right?
Because
Like it's close enough where like I guess I'm comfortable saying that would be my 0 RB approach this season. Just depending on how these ADPs jump around before drafts. But if you can get like a Miles Sanders in the 7th and Dame Pierce in the 8th, and then follow that up with like a Cam Akers or David Montgomery, like I'm happy.
That's what, yeah, I was gonna say, because this year more than ever, it's more doable. We're
Mhm.
seeing like wide receiver ADPs pushed up so high and running backs pushed so late, so it's very possible for you to, again, especially if you're high on any of those players from that group, like you said, you're especially high on Dobbins, Sanders, Pierce. It's very possible you could get those guys round 6, 7, 8, possibly, and then you had already taken 5 players before that, so you could have taken QB, tight end, and 3 receivers, and then gone Sanders, Dobbins, or Dobbins, Sanders, Pierce, or something like that. And I know you would love that. So, and that's the thing is ultimately this is where tier base comes in very, very well again, because you can tier that out and see where these ADPs are going, and you're like, wait, I can grab 3 elite receivers. I can grab a Kelsey and 2 to 3 high-end receivers, plus get my running backs I like. So
and then snag a Samaje late,
Yeah.
and just be ready to roll. That's how I go about doing it. Is I look for those value plays that I'm super high on, and look at the ADP and see if it works out. But I need to come away with people I'm comfortable with. Like I'm not going into a draft saying I'm going to go 0 RB and just load up on the other positions and then like come away with, Pacheco and Rashad White, because that's not what I would feel very uncomfortable doing something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
As long as it's players I'm comfortable with coming away with, I'm okay with it. But it's a risk, because if I like them that high, like Miles Sanders, if I like J.K. Dobbins high, Dame Pierce high, there's other people. There's probably people in your league that value those players just as high, and they could come up and take them. So you got to be able to pivot.
Yeah, then you're left in the situation like you said before, where you're not comfortable with what you're.
Then you're not comfortable. Your RB2 could be like Jerick McKinnon, or you said James Conner, AJ Dillon, those kind of players. Like I would hate it. I would hate that. And then there's hero RB. So it's kind of the opposite, where you're starting off the draft just kind of loading up on RBs, which we kind of hit with. We kind of hit that, I guess, right?
Yeah. So with hero, a lot of times with anyone has like hero
kind of 0
or
wide receiver approach, I guess.
Yeah, I would say a lot of times people will consider it if like they just take one, and like whether it's hero, like some people call it anchor, some people call it hero. It's similar. I think there's slightly differences, but I know, like for example, like a hero RB build, you could just take one, like a McCaffrey,
CMC.
Eckler, Bijan, and then you load up on other positions, and you take a bunch of shots on your second one.
So that would be my approach.
That's more my approach too.
Yeah, that'd be my approach. If I can come away with like CMC, Bijan, Eckler, Tony, I love Tony Pollard.
See, that's the thing is, I consider Tony Pollard in that, and he's going even in like underdog, which is the highest ADP. He's late second, so sometimes he slips to the third. So like, I almost feel like, dude, like I love it so much because I could take a truly elite, like I could take a Chase, a Cup. I've gotten a lot of, like in underdog right now, I've gotten a lot of like Chase or Cup builds with Tony Pollard. And then coming back around with another high end, whether it's from that point, I could take a high end. I could take a Mark Andrews. I could take one of the elite quarterbacks. I could take another like elite receiver. So you have so much flexibility too, right there. Coming through with like I said, either a Chase, Cup. You could do Lamb. You could do Tyreek. Get Pollard in the next round, and then go from there. And I could still consider that a hero RB build as long as you have one elite level guy, elite level touch kind of guy.
You're breaking up on me, Norton. But I get where I'll keep going. You're breaking up a little bit, but what you're getting at is exactly where I'm at too, because I love Tony Pollard and I have him where you do. I am at my RB2. So if I can snag him in the late second, and I can come away with a top tier receiver, like somebody I love, CeeDee Lamb or Jamar Chase or one of those guys, and you follow that back up with Tony Pollard, in my mind, that's still a hero RB. And I come away with a hero wide receiver as well. So that's where like I would probably lean heavy that way if I was in a redraft and I had I would even be very comfortable like if you have the 5th pick, getting a receiver, following that up in the 2nd with Tony Pollard, or
100%.
even a lot earlier than what his ADP says. Like I'm so fine with that.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's so. We were going to hit auction tonight, but we are at an hour and a half. So we've been kind of going a little bit heavy. So I think we will save that. Yeah, we'll save auction. It's a topic I like talking about. I know you do as well. Definitely. Mario loves talking about it. So maybe we'll get on and do a straight auction kind of based episode, because I think it's a very fun draft that a lot of people don't do.
There's tons of strategy with that, so it could be a whole
episode. There's a lot to get into with auction drafts and stuff like that. It's a fun one, and I think it's something that if you're starting up a draft, it's something that you guys should kind of look into if you want to get in there. Definitely a great thing to get into. But with that being said, I think we hit everything on the agenda for tonight.
For sure, dude. Another good one.
Anything else you got for us, Nort?
Not much. Yeah. So it was another good one. Hope everyone got some good tips and strategy to take away to their own drafts with this.
Yeah, this is another one that was very, like we said earlier, it was going to be a loose kind of just free-flowing combo and how we approach things, and more of our general ideas as opposed to strict kind of dense numbers and stuff like that. So this was a fun episode. I always like doing these with you. And this was the Dad Bod Fantasy Squad for Rob. That's Norton. If you do not follow him, go follow him at Norton0723. He is one of the best on Twitter, so give that man a follow.
Appreciate it.
Peace.
Thank you for watching our episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
If you aren't already following us on Twitter, check us out at DadBodFS.
We'll be posting all of our best clips and videos to all of our social media: TikTok, Instagram, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. You can find us on there at DadBod Fantasy Squad.
Lastly, if you'd rather just listen, we make sure we post our audio of each episode on all the major streaming platforms. Stick with us all season long so together we can count our trophies and not our calories.